I'm walking down the street.
I do want to say to Doni and many of you in this room that over a very long career in this city, all of you have helped me and my colleagues tell the truth and to try to tell.
I may not look like you and you me, but
My head up.
I'm South Carolina, so I just...
What does this event mean to you, Miss Peggy Moss?
Oh, my heart,
Happy 20th anniversary.
my heart is about loving up on my sisters. Do you know what it feels like to have your sisters in the room? Done.
And dare to be different and unique. I'm gonna be the best me I can be by letting His glory shine through. I am beautiful, I am blessed, but not just what you see in the flesh. I'm free from people, free from myself. There's a
The doctor lived next door to the janitor to the reverend and the lawyer. We were together. Now we get so high and mighty that you create stress for your society because you don't like poor black folks either. That's a health problem. Get yourself together so I can stop being taking care of geriatric people and get back to pediatrics. I thank you, Doni, for all you've done. Let's keep doing it all the more.
letting His glory shine through. Dare to be you, dare to be me, dare to be different and unique. I'm gonna be the best me I can be by letting His glory shine through. And I dare you, I dare you, I dare you to be you.
First name's Doni, last name's Glover. Entered the winner for the long haul, baby. How you doing out there? We had some challenges yesterday, but we're here and we're rolling. Okay, our guest for today is Mr. Kelly Cross. Kelly, you gonna cut your camera on? Can't see you there. You know, this is television. Kelly?
I cannot get my camera working.
Yeah, I had similar challenges yesterday. Tell them who you are, Kelly Cross. Tell them about Old Goucher.
Yes. So my name is Kelly Cross. I'm a resident of Baltimore for about 14 years, president of the Old Goucher Community Association, which is here geographically the center of the city. So if you know where Charles and North is, up to Charles and 25th, that area from Howard over to Guilford is Old Goucher.
Okay, and Kelly, you're not originally from Baltimore.
I am not. No, I am. I'm originally from Southern West Virginia, a small town called Beckley, about 6 hours southwest of Baltimore. So, yeah, grew up there. Still have family there, but have been, have been here in Baltimore. I've made this my home.
So, you know, you're about the second black person I know from West Virginia.
Who's the first?
J. Howard Henderson, former president of the Greater Baltimore Urban League.
Okay. No, I thought I was the only one, Doni. So now I know this.
You know,
Yeah,
I've only heard stories about West Virginia. What's West Virginia like?
So, you know, West Virginia is a big state. It's a long state. So people often think, oh, I've been up to Harper's Ferry, or I know, West Virginia is a couple hours away. That part of West Virginia is about 5 hours north of me. I'm from the deep southern part in the mountains. It's coal mining country. It's, strong community still there, thankfully. I grew up, my pastor growing up was T.D. Jakes before he moved on to Texas and, became the pastor everyone knows. So we had a really strong, stable community in Southern West Virginia. And, a lot of talent has come out of that part of the world.
Okay. So Michael Haney poses a question to you. We haven't even gotten started. And here come the journalists. He says, Old Goucher, isn't that where Terra Cafe is located?
That's right. Yes, the very northeastern corner of the neighborhood. It's it kind of straddles Old Goucher and Charles Village, but yeah, it's right there on 25th Street.
Now, did you know that there? And this is part two to Haney's question. Did you know that there were 5 businesses that were vandalized last week there, including Terra Cafe?
I'd heard about the vandalism. I did not know about. I did not know Terra Cafe specifically. So no, and I'm guessing were those businesses there on 25th Street?
Yes, sir.
Yes, yes, yeah. No, I knew about some of the general issues that had happened, on that corridor. I'll say in terms of the way our neighborhood is developing, a lot of our attention and focus has been very limited, very confined in terms of, where we've been able to dedicate our resources. 25th Street has always been a challenge, in part because it sits on a dividing line kind of between neighborhoods. So to the north of us, we've got the Charles Village neighborhood, which traditionally has not been, shall I say, very friendly to, our method of development in Old Goucher. And unfortunately, because of some of the power dynamics, a lot of the businesses on 25th Street, as well as on the southern end of the neighborhood, 21st Street, have suffered. And I think I think actually what you see happening on 25th Street and 21st Street are sort of emblematic of some of the issues in Baltimore. We've got predominantly white neighborhoods to the north and south of Old Goucher. Old Goucher is the only still predominantly black neighborhood in what's been called the White L, which is that kind of corridor down Charles Street. And, as we've taken our own kind of different approach to uplifting our neighborhood, we've often gotten a lot of pushback from the neighborhoods to the north and south. And that kind of disparity has caused tensions and problems for some of the businesses on those border areas.
Now, Kelly Cross, you being a black man, you can't help but notice that segregation is still alive in Baltimore.
Very much so, Doni. And it's funny that you led with, asking where I'm from and about West Virginia, because I will often get, and I'll mention West Virginia. I got cousins who, in Maryland, New York, California, all over the place. And you'll say, from West Virginia. When I was growing up, still in West Virginia, and people would say, oh, it must be so racist there, and people have very strong opinions about what West Virginia would be like compared to the quote unquote progressive cities of the North. But one thing I can say in my more than a decade living in Baltimore is that I've never experienced more racism than I have in Baltimore. It puts West Virginia to shame. Maybe not in the overt way you would see it in West Virginia with, poor white people sort of, saying stuff and just being ignorant. The problem in Baltimore is that it's a very sophisticated type of racism.
Yeah, it is.
That's so insidious. You can barely put your finger on it sometimes.
I can put my whole foot on it. So let's delve into this history just a bit more. Now, Harper's Ferry, you mentioned, right?
Yes.
Now, when you go back, and I don't know if you got a copy of my book, I Am Black Wall Street, but I talk about your home state. I talk about John Brown.
Yep.
John Brown is one of my heroes.
Yes.
John Brown fought for black people, and he was an abolitionist. And it was
and
there.
He put it on the line for black people.
Hey, put it all on the line.
Yep.
And his last hurrah was there in Harper's Ferry at a federal facility. He went there ablazing guns, and his death led to the onset of the Civil War. Is that correct?
That's correct. Yes, it is.
Right there in Harper's Ferry, West Virginia. So despite the stories I heard growing up about the Hatfields and the McCoys and the shotguns and the bootlegging and those cigars made of corn cob, I know that a very famous man put it all on the line right there in Harper's Ferry, Virginia. Now, coming back to Baltimore, In 1907, this city elected J. Barry Mahul as the mayor. And he is known as the father of segregation. And thanks to those good old people in Roland Park, some of their descendants still live today. And I do mean the races. They are still practicing chicanery in 2023. Do you know that some of the good people in Roland Park, Baltimore's first suburban garden community, actually put up a darn barrier blocking the people in Ho's Heights, named after Grandison Ho, a black man, a free black man. They blocked the road, their access road to Roland Avenue in the year 2023. And they thought that was civilized. You know, we have the audacity to call people uncivilized, heathens, and the like. Nobody's more uncivilized and more heathen than those racists who live in Roland Park. Care to address that?
Well, you know, I would address it by saying, and actually going back to your John Brown example and white people who have put it on the line in the past, I would say it's not just confined to the people in Roland Park. I mean, I see it with a number of progressives, quote unquote progressives. You know,
yeah, because if you're a racist, you can't be too darn progressive.
You can't be. But even if you are a quote unquote progressive, you can still be racist. And, and I've seen it even amongst people who have,
you know, those liberal.
Yeah, or you know, people who have the Black Lives Matter flags up. It's almost become, for many people, just sort of a totem, a thing like, you know, I'm with you, but I'm not that with you. And that's why I bring up the John Brown example, because I think we have a lot of white progressives today, younger people, social justice warriors who you know, want to get all of the nomenclature correct, the pronouns correct, the racial, you know, racial and gender issues correct. They're theoretically right on all the points, but in the way they live their lives, it's really no different than the way their parents or their grandparents lived. And I think I bring up the John Brown example because I've seen a lot of people, a lot of white progressives, white liberals who are doing a lot of talking about equality, about Black Lives Matter, but are not willing to put anything on the line at all for Black liberation, for Black empowerment. You know, it's all talk. And unfortunately, they have sort of their school of willing Black folks, willing to go along with it for, you know, a little seat at the table. You know, a great example of that too. I'm sorry.
Go ahead. Go ahead, Kelly. Kelly.
Strong City, Baltimore. You know.
Okay. Let's back up. You went blank for a second. Strong City, Baltimore. The CEO, 40 years old, was arrested and charged with mismanagement of money, fraudulent activities, fiscal impropriety.
Correct. That's right. Reginald Davis. And it's and I use that as an example because
they also raised the question in the community, why wasn't the lady who was there with them, why didn't she get charged? The
Karen
white lady.
Stokes. Yes. So I think this is a great example that highlights some of the issues we've been talking about, Donnie. So Strong City, Baltimore, like many of these very powerful nonprofits in Baltimore, this sort of nonprofit industrial complex that quasi runs parts of the city. Strong City, Baltimore was a white organization run by white people for its history. It had a white CEO, Karen Stokes, who was the mastermind behind the Hohen building, acquiring it, renovating it, raising the money for it. And under whose watch, the money, however much money, I forgot how much it was exactly, $2+ million, under Karen Stokes' watch, that money disappeared. Karen Stokes is an interesting example because, you know, she played into
$2 million missing underneath of the white lady.
Yes.
But the young black man, he went straight into federal custody.
he went straight into federal custody. But the example, the problematic that I'm highlighting here, Donnie, is that there was no reason for Reginald Davis to take that job once Karen Stokes resigned as CEO of Strong City Baltimore. Karen Stokes, again, white liberal, who I think shortly before she resigned from Strong City Baltimore, wrote a post about how she was leaning into her white privilege and she wanted to use her white privilege to help disadvantaged Black people. It was, I remember it was such
we've heard that story in Sandtown many, many times over the past 30 years. They're coming to help these poor, uneducated, crime-ridden, health-infected Black people. Well, thank you.
That's right. Well, yeah, she's going to
What
lean
would
into
we
this
do without you?
Use her white privilege to help these Black people. And she went on a total rant about this. And I remember reading this, thinking it was hilarious. Meanwhile, over that period, while she was in charge of that all that money went missing. Fast forward, they take in Reginald Davis, who had nothing to do with any of this. Did
Sounds
not
like
need
a
to
fall
be.
guy. It sounds like he needs a good
Fall guy.
lawyer.
He needs a good lawyer. But my question is, why did he take the job?
Woo.
There were many community leaders who said to him, do not take this job. You know, there are issues with this organization. There are things going on. There's money that people are saying has gone missing. But he decided to jump into it.
He did not believe that doo-doo stinks?
I'm saying a version of that. What I'm saying, Donnie, is that he did not believe, in my opinion, and this is a big issue I see in Black Baltimore, he did not believe that white institutional establishment doo-doo stinks.
Would throw him under the bus faster than a Baltimore speed camera. Well, he knows now.
Yeah, he's gonna know. He's gonna know when he goes back in front of that judge.
Now, Michael Haney said something about 8 minutes ago. He mentioned the Midtown Benefits District, where a special tax is paid by businesses and residents for special care. Well, correct. I mean, isn't that why you organize? I don't see anything wrong with that. Actually, that's a very clean part of town. Now, I do know that they down towards North Avenue, you have you're inundated with treatment facilities.
Mm-hmm. That's right.
But I also know that on 25th Street in particular, you've got you've got one of the greatest concentrations of Black businesses in Baltimore City. Is that correct?
That's right. That's right. Right on 25th Street. Exactly.
Does the city of Baltimore, does the mayor, do they pay attention to that area as it relates to Black businesses? I have seen Mayor Brandon Scott at Jackie Cummings' Black Wall Street Expo a couple of years back.
What I'll say is, in the time that I've lived in Baltimore, we've done a lot in Old Goucher. I mean, the neighborhood has really begun to transition in a positive way. Crime is down significantly, even though we sometimes get little flare-ups, as happened last week. Crime is down significantly in the neighborhood. The tax revenue is up. More businesses are opening. People coming in. We have Wally Bella Baltimore. I think I mentioned to you, Donnie, the first collectively Black-owned film studio in the country that's opening on 23rd Street in a huge building that we acquired in conjunction with the Telfar, the Black fashion brand out of New York. But we're moving things in the right direction. But all of our work has been done without any help at all from the city over any of the mayors that have been in power since I've lived in Baltimore. And that hasn't been for lack of our asking for help or trying to get it. But we started to realize that trying to push forward innovative ideas in Baltimore was so difficult to try to do that through the establishment channels that we had to form our own parallel alternative system and network to bring in capital, to bring in businesses. So, it's been more difficult, but at least I can say when I look at the successes we've had in the neighborhood, those successes have all been ours.
Well, Kelly, I just want to take a moment and commend you for being a leader in a part of town. You had no idea you were stepping into the belly of the beast. So here's a comment. Here's a comment from one of our viewers. May I try to connect the dots? Now, I'm a little thrown, but it says, wouldn't we want to think of a different project name for Red Line to a non-color coded effort?
Thank you. So I had this conversation with someone just a couple weeks ago, and it's in part because I'm not supportive of the Red Line project, and so
Why? Okay. Well, unpack this for me. Now, the Red Line is a project that I always thought Martin O'Malley could have left shovel ready. And so when Hogan comes in, a lot of these black liberals started blaming Hogan. Hogan killed the Red Line. Hogan killed the Red Line. And it's like, yeah, Martin O'Malley didn't support the Red Line. He could have made a shovel ready before Hogan even got there. Just like Baltimore City Public Schools, O'Malley sued not to be responsible for Baltimore City Public Schools, but because of who writes the newspapers, the story gets twisted. So tell me about Red Line. You think that's a racist name?
I think it's a racist name, and I think it's a racist project. I think it's a racist project. And I think that because when you look at the transit corridors in the city where people are actually using transit, and bear in mind, Baltimore has one of the highest percentages of households that have no access to an automobile. I think it's almost 30 some odd percent. A third of households in Baltimore have no access to an automobile. The most heavily transited public transit corridors in Baltimore are North Avenue and the Greenmount/York Road corridor. By far, those are the most heavily, public transit uses in the city. So if you're looking to build a public transit system and to really improve it, in my opinion, you go to where the people are. Where are the people who are using it? Where can development really be spurred by it? Not at this building and they will come mentality. The problem, of course, is that North Avenue and Greenmount/York Road, those are predominantly black neighborhoods. If you build a tram or streetcar or light rail on North Avenue, even though that's the most sensible place because you would be able to create a comprehensive transit network by building there, you're connecting black neighborhoods to black neighborhoods. Same on Greenmount/York Road. You're connecting black neighborhoods to black neighborhoods. The reason the Red Line got so much traction is not because they wanted to connect people who are actually using transit. In my view, it was more of a vanity project to try to somehow spur development in the white areas of Harbor Point, Harbor East, Fells Point, Federal Hill, that area. Now they say, well, we're connecting it through West Baltimore to this job center at Social Security. In my view, that's BS.
It is. It's just like the Nowhere Highway. And if you're talking about transportation, when we were in Atlanta back in May, we gave people a peep at MARTA, Metropolitan Atlanta Rapid Transit Authority, and we saw that they have a more egalitarian, a more utilitarian public transportation system, where Baltimore subway is just as racist as the father of segregation, J. Barry Mahol, the mayor of Baltimore from 1907 to 1911. It's the dumbest subway in the entire world. There's no dumber subway in any other place on planet Earth.
It deliberately does not connect to things.
Because it was built by dumb racists.
Yes. Well, and that's where I think
racism is just dumb. Because how long does it take a racist to figure out, well, damn, I could have been a millionaire if I just would have sold to black people. They used to make our black women couldn't even try on shoes in downtown Baltimore. Our black women had to take an outline, had to draw an outline of their foot on a piece of paper because of racists. Racism is so stupid, especially when you find out that your great-great-grandmother was black. That's how stupid racism is.
No one said that racism is smart or rational, but it exists. It's a very powerful force. And I think, and the Red Line is another great example of how insidious it is, because I think what we're seeing is people are so desperate for transit in Baltimore, which is needed. We need more transit in the city. They're so desperate for that. They're desperate for any sort of state involvement, any little amount of dollars that can come into Baltimore. but the way those dollars are conditioned to come in, it's always about uplifting, quote unquote, stabilizing white neighborhoods, and assuming that black neighborhoods cannot become uplifted on their own, can't take their own initiative, that they somehow have to be connected to the white neighborhoods for that to happen. And I don't believe that that's the case. And I think the red line.
Kelly, I got to get a word in.
Yes.
For the past couple of years, the squeegee kids dominate the news.
Mm-hmm.
The other day, I'm coming across North Avenue. Thank God the mosque number 6 and the brother from the Nation of Islam selling the bean pies, because they had literally been bullied off of the corner by the white panhandlers. Now, when we talk about people coming up to our cars, they talk about the squeegee kids all day long.
Right.
But they don't talk about the white addicts right there at North and 83.
Yep.
That are doing some of the most diabolically loony activities. I mean,
yes,
it's just mind-blowing. But Fox 45 and the racists that own it, they don't see that. Kelly, I got to give you some of these comments that are coming in. You have more comments in the first half hour than we've had in a long time. Okay, so this is from Michael Haney. Old Goucher is the epitome of racism in Baltimore. Mixture of old white idealists, you left off at S, Michael, and black progressive business people like Terrence Dixon of Terra Cafe. Michael Haney's a dear friend, so don't mind me throwing a little jab at him. And you need to learn how to spell Terrence's name. It's T-E-R-E-N-C-E, but we'll take your comment. Okay, this is from Tia Richards. She's very active in our community, and she will be at our Sandtown meeting next Wednesday. Still is and does. The building is just in a disinvested community, and they have no presence or involvement in the community.
And who is that?
I'm a little thrown by that. Maybe Tia can clarify. This was about 5 minutes ago. Well, actually, 15 minutes ago. Okay, just bear with me. Michael Haney comes back. Karen Stokes should have been the one locked up. She worked hand in hand with Hopkins and developers to take strong city money to invest in the old lithograph building in East Baltimore. So now Michael Haney wants to be a backseat interviewer. You know, Kelly, let me just tell you, we have the greatest guests on this show, and a lot of aspiring journalists would love to sit in this seat. Okay, so here goes Michael Haney's vicarious question. Ask your guest, does he know about the Cross Street Partners and developer Bill Struver?
Yes, no, I know who they are. I know that they are.
He's got one more question for you. Do you know that for every linear mile of rail, $100 million in economic development is realized, which is the impetus for gentrification? Well, thank you. Okay, so here goes Tia as our final comment for now. Yes, MARTA stopped the subway from coming up 400 when it enters into Roswell, Alpharetta. Well, that's a big area. I mean, they at least covered the basics. Yes, MARTA stopped the subway from coming up 400 when it enters into Roswell, Alpharetta, and no public buses after 10. They did a whole boycott that it did not go past Sandy Springs. Okay, well, they covered the basics. Now, I know if you're in the inner city Atlanta, and if you're living out that way, you got to have a car anyway. You knew when you moved 40 minutes outside of Atlanta, you know you need a car just to go to the store in Atlanta. Come on now. That's why she came back to Baltimore. Okay, so Kelly, let's talk about some of the things that you have done to attract people to Baltimore. Now, here they have a contest online of how you say Baltimore. Us locals say Baltimore, okay? You either got it or you don't. But tell them about Art Basel, and then we'll get into some of the current things you have done. But what have you done to paint a different picture of Baltimore than one would find with those good old people on Fox 45?
Right. Well, I would say for us, it really started with with our sidewalks, with outside, with streetscaping. So it started with planting trees in the neighborhood back in 2011. I think that was the first sort of initiative we engaged in. And the streets of Old Goucher were all concrete, asphalt. It was a heat island, really unpleasant to walk. So it began with trees, and over the last decade, we planted over 800 new trees in the neighborhood. A lot of them have gotten so big that you wouldn't even realize that they're less than a decade old. So I would say that's been the first thing to start transforming the neighborhood, and that vibe gave people. We noticed as more of the trees went in, as more people began to walk and were comfortable in the neighborhood, a lot of the issues began to subside before we even got the businesses moving in. So, a lot of the littering started to cease. A lot of the addicts who would be passed out or laying on the sidewalks on certain blocks, they started to migrate away. And this was without any active push. It just naturally happened. So that began, and then we started going into attracting small-scale capital. And again, this is because with no support from the city, with no support from the state at that time, the best I could do was get my own capital, friends, and folks who lived in other places. There'd be a little building here. I'd say, hey, a friend of mine in New York, can you come up with $300,000 and buy this? I got someone we can put in it. Can you buy this one for $200,000? So we started to get a little expertise with how to build these businesses in the community. And now we've moved into actually trying to help and support folks buying and owning their own properties. I mean, one thing I'm very proud of, a business that recently opened on 24th and between Howard and Maryland, is a place called Our Time Kitchen by Chef Katina Smith. So, Chef Kat, as she's known in Baltimore, she opened a shared kitchen focused on Black female chefs. And I was happy to help them. They actually bought their space, so they own it. They own the building.
I love to see shop owners that buy their space. There's nothing worse for me than somebody leasing, and then the next year, after they have a booming first year, the landlord goes up on the rent. It's going to happen.
Yeah. No, I know. And that's, to my mind, that is the greatest antidote to gentrification, is buying the properties, buying them when they're inexpensive, buying them now. And that's what I'm encouraging people to do. That's the same thing we did with our Lalibela cohort. We bought the building, knowing full well that we want to ensure that this Black film collective can stay in that spot indefinitely.
I think you skipped over the name. You said Lalibela.
Lalibela, Baltimore. L-A-L-I.
I get it. You have to celebrate that name, Lalibela, because that's one of the most ancient names on earth.
That's correct.
Lalibela is a very holy place, sacred place in Ethiopia. Ethiopia being the only African nation that wasn't colonized, and home to one of the oldest Bibles in the world, home to Christianity long before it reached the Greeks.
That's right. No, and I think, Doni, we've got solutions to be able to take Baltimore in a different direction as it develops. But one of the key things, I believe for Black people, Black communities in Baltimore and nationwide, is we've got to get out of this mindset of thinking that the suburbs are better, of thinking that living in the suburbs with the car and the picket fence, that's the American dream. Because what's happening, and we're seeing it happen in Baltimore now, same thing that happened in DC, happened in New York and other cities. I don't know if you saw the Baltimore Banner article a couple months ago, Doni, about the shifting demographics in Baltimore. But what's happening now is
I got poor white people in my alley. I got poor white people squatting down the street in houses, vacant houses.
Yes.
But I also have a couple of white people moving into Sandtown who are good neighbors.
Mm-hmm.
But they see the value of this property. And you're right, African Americans, American Africans, we all tailing it to Northeast Baltimore. We still want to go to Randallstown. Although some Black people are moving from Randallstown back to Druid Hill Avenue for what they paid for one of them prefab houses out there. What, $200,000? Mm-hmm. They could get a mansion in Baltimore City.
That's right.
But I do see white people moving to Sandtown and Harlem Park.
Well, and what's happening again with the demographics is we've got a massive black flight out of Baltimore happening right now. So the people leaving are black folks predominantly. The people moving in predominantly are wealthier white people. And I think, I think if that does not reverse itself and there's not some intervention, not only are we looking at we're looking at a gentrified city that's happening right now, and we're watching it as white people move in, as we're going to have likely a majority white city, in my opinion, by the next census, by the 2030 census. And
hold up, when's the next census? In 10 years? 7 years?
7 years. Yep.
I don't know about that. See, Baltimore. See, racism really works against itself.
Yeah. See, but I'm using DC as an example.
I see a lot of white people moving back, a lot of white women, but they got black boyfriends.
I mean, I see that anecdotally, but I will say I think the numbers don't lie, Doni, and I don't have the specific numbers in front of me, but I know when we moved to Baltimore, the city was around 65% black. Overwhelmingly majority black city. That number has now gone down to around 58% black in just that short amount of time. And I think
but it's an increase in Latinos.
That's correct too.
Now let me tell you, black people make more babies than white people, but Latinos, they make more babies than black people and white people. The Latinos multiply.
Yeah. Well, I think
so a future mayor of Baltimore will be speaking Spanish.
Yeah, and I think between those two trends, and again, I don't see a problem with it. I think we need a diverse city. We need more people moving in,
and they will work a lot of times. A lot of people, black and white, don't want to work. Let's call a spade a spade. And now with this COVID thing, people have gotten comfortable getting a check.
Yeah.
And I see them Latino sisters, hey, they do the jobs that we used to do. Hotel jobs, cleaning up jobs. Some of us are too good to take a cleanup job or wait tables.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
There was a time when we were hungry. The 40s, the 50s, the 60s, we would take jobs like that. Our mothers would take them, our aunties, our grandmothers, and they would save their money. But not today. Oh, no.
Yeah.
Take a job that requires you to break a sweat. Oh no! Tell me I'm wrong. Put your comments in here.
I think it's a cultural thing. I think it's a cultural change and shift, and and that comes with prosperity over generations. I think the issue and where black folks in America get confused is that we collectively are often looking at white people and thinking, well, I just want what the white folks have. I want to do what they do, behave the way they behave. But our communities are very different. The histories are very different. The trajectories are different. And so I think that goes also to this notion around suburbanization, because what I see happening now, and I remember this happened with cousins of mine who were in DC. I had cousins who had property in Southwest DC, close to the waterfront. And I remember as DC was changing, they wanted to get out to Prince George's County so bad. They were so thrilled to sell their place in DC. So happy. This was around, I think, 2003, 2004. They sold their place, moved out to Prince George's County. And I remember saying to them, hey guys, I think DC is really moving up. I just don't think that, it's a good idea for you all to sell and move now. But they did, bought a prefab out there in Bowie. Their house now the house that they sold in DC, they sold it for around $270,000.
That thing worth $2.5 million.
I was looking recently; it was worth around $800,000.
And the prefab out there in Prince George's County probably worth about $150 at best.
I don't even know what their place out there is worth, but I can tell you it's not worth what that little spot in DC was worth. And that's what I see happening. That's the kind of the game, the shell game with money, with values, is that these black folks are pursuing this white American dream in the suburbs. They don't realize that they're losing their money all over again in this flight out of the city.
Here's a comment from Michael Haney. Gentrification is happening in Baltimore. Once the Baltimore Peninsula opens fully, it will become the central point and focus in Baltimore. May move City Hall down there. Now, here's a comment from Musa Blue. The browning of America will not be stopped. So
yeah, see,
let me just add in this bit of history. Baltimore, prior to the Civil War, had the largest number of black people, had the largest number of free black people in America.
that's right.
So there's always been this question of what to do with black people. There's always been this issue of what to do. You know, what is the future of black people? It's just always, they call it the Negro dilemma.
Mm-hmm.
What to do with all of these black people. And so then when you get black elected officials in office, you hope, or as Cedric the Entertainer would say, you wish that our leaders would have some idea of the historical context within which we're dealing. We would hope that they understood that although you had a father of segregation in J. Barry Mahou, you also had two black lawyers, Ashby Hawkins and George McMecken, who stayed on his case like white on rice, pun intended. That we, as long as you're black and in America, you have to fight. And I think that's what happened when we moved to Randallstown, we moved to Essex. Some of us came to the conclusion that we no longer have to fight.
That's right. That's right.
As long as you're black and in America, you got to fight. So you might as well come in the door swinging. I'm
Well,
damn,
Doni,
you hit me. I grew up on North Avenue. Punch before you get punched. Punch and ask questions later.
right. Well, Doni, I'll say, I think that the issue around black leadership, political leadership, black political leadership could be extremely powerful if it exists as black political leadership for black empowerment. But just having black political leadership that is not really in line with black empowerment, that doesn't help black people. And I see that's another issue I've seen a great deal with the Baltimore political class is that, in the same way we talked about Reginald Davis, kind of jumping the heel as soon as he got tapped on the shoulder by the white establishment power structure to take that job at Strong City. I see the same thing happening with a lot of our black elected leadership in Baltimore. And I won't say this applies to every single one, but by and large, what I've seen is folks who are there, but who still have deep down inside this sense of inferiority, who have deep down inside this real desire to be the golden Negro who gets tapped on the shoulder, gets invited to the tents at Preakness, gets invited out to the horse farms in Timonium, and it gets somehow impressed by that stuff and thinks that those things are a big deal when they're not. And I think that's how.
Did you bring any money back to your neighborhood? Did you get Pimlico Racetrack, which is partially surrounded by black people, partially surrounded by white people, some white people with some money? Were you able to get the businesses in Park Heights a piece of that pie? The Black Caribbean businesses hold that neighborhood down all year long, but when Preakness comes, these businesses are the first ones ostracized from the process of making money.
Mm-hmm. I went to Preakness for the first time year before last, so 2021, and that was quite an experience for me. I'd never had any interest to go, but I went, and
I just want the black people to know who make it to the infield. Don't get too caught up in your seersuckers and your black-eyed Susans. Them white people still hate you, and I don't care what kind of straw hat you got on. They still don't like you, and they don't want you there. Yeah, they'll tolerate you for a day, but then we get up in there and think, oh, we've arrived. But you go right outside the gates, and the black businesses all along Park Heights Avenue, we won't even go over there and support them.
Well, that's the thing I found really funny about that.
That's these new Negroes.
it really encapsulated a lot of Baltimore for me because it felt more like a military lockdown.
Damn right.
You know, you drive there, it almost felt like an event where the county, or sort of again that white power structure in the Baltimore region, they take that one day of Preakness to say, hey, black folks, we know you run, we know you have Baltimore City, we know you run in Baltimore City, but we're just going to give you one day in the year where we're going to bring our full presence down, the state troopers, police, etc., just to remind you that we're still the ones in control, and we'll still, you know, one day of the year we'll have our folks come down, get boozy, drunk, falling all over each other in the middle of a black neighborhood. And it was just this piece of theater that was so problematic to me. I was there with some you know, very prominent actors and actresses who were in Baltimore for the time. So I was visiting with them, which is the only reason I went back to the tents there. And I was very disappointed to see a lot of our leadership back there just grinning ear to ear.
Yeah, they were grinning. They were tap dancing if you look close enough.
Thrilled that they were there, thrilled that they were, you know, and what I think they don't understand is that being elected to something does not mean that anything changed with you intrinsically. As soon as they lose that position, lose an election, or out of power, they're not going back in those tents anymore.
Yeah. But we act like we've arrived. Listen, here's another comment from Michael Haney. He takes the cake for the most comments today. Separate but equal. Desegregation was the demise of black communities. Oh, he goes so far as to say blame Thurgood Marshall. Michael Haney, you're going straight to hell with that comment. Okay, so Michael Haney, you know, his mother dropped him a couple of times when he was a baby. So listen, I'll need you to tell him who you brought to Baltimore. You brought the Art Basel lady here, Art Basel.
Oh, yes. Yeah. Now, we've brought a lot of people to Baltimore. I mean,
who's the Art Basel lady?
So Mira Rubel,
Mira Rubel, that's right.
Yes, she's one of the people who started, got off Art Basel Miami off the ground.
You brought her to Baltimore, and you had Sheila and I go down there and meet her. Yes.
She's a friend. We've had Grzina Kulczyk here, one of the wealthiest women in the world, come. Major architects, designers, investors. So I've slowly been building up this momentum. Haven't really put a lot of it out in the press because I like to keep my stuff pretty tight.
Listen, you brought Stephon Marbury and Steve Francis to Old Goucher. How many people know? And Kelly, in the picture, damn if you didn't look like a ball player. I mean, you had to look. You were faking, I guess, but
I had my mean mug on. I had my mean mug on in that picture, Doni.
But you look like you could bring the ball up court and do a couple of passes, maybe even shoot a couple of threes. Can you play basketball?
I can. That's my little secret. But yeah, no, I can ball a little bit.
Wow. You brought Stephon Marbury and Steve Francis, who played for University of Maryland. You brought them to Baltimore. What was that all about?
You know, just another set of investors. You know, as we've been getting Lalibela Baltimore off the ground, which really is going to become one of the epicenters for Black culture, certainly in the nation and even globally. People, you know, folks from all over are hearing about it. They're coming in now. You know, I'm beginning to slowly build this momentum around Black investment, the creation of Black businesses, bringing Black capital into Baltimore. So I'm doing these tours, you know, quite a bit. People are taking interest now, and I'll reach out again to our political class in Baltimore. I keep them abreast of things that are going on. You know, I get very little interest or feedback.
Who's the councilman for Old Goucher?
It's actually Robert Stokes, and I'll say Robert has been one of the few people who has been extremely supportive.
That's wonderful to hear. God, so many people be swinging on Robert. Good to hear.
No, Robert is, yeah, and they swing on him. And, you know, look, I ran against Robert in 2016. But you know, as I've deepened the relationship with him and begun to kind of really learn what he's trying to do, he really cares about Black people and Black neighborhoods.
Go ahead, Kelly.
That's a passion of his, and so he's one of the few who actually does show up, try to help, do what he can. But
Kelly, let me tell you something. What you have just said, I wasn't a Brandon Scott supporter, but the man is mayor. Now I can sit on the sideline and poke my lips out for 4 years, or I can roll my sleeves up and get in there and help him.
Yeah.
The same with you and Robert Stokes. You ran against him. He won, and you did what grown people should do. See, grown people, there's no manual for grown people. You see a situation, you can either ignore it or you can be a part of fixing it. And I commend you for rolling your sleeves up, which you've always done, and staying involved, because to not help your own city is suicide.
Mm-hmm. That's right. That's right. And a lot of these people, you know, what they're looking for is some direction. You know, they I think what I see happening in city government quite a bit is that they're extremely reactionary. They're lurching from crisis to crisis with no actual.
And it's a gang. It's like everybody wants position in the gang, only to find out that the gang is as responsible for this segregation, this uneven investment. The Democratic Party has screwed black people in Baltimore. I'm sorry, we don't want to hear it, but we are in love with a political party that has done everything possible to dismantle our power base. The Black Democrats of Baltimore. I said it. They're the number one enemy of black people. Vote for the Democrats, vote for the Democrats. Damn it, we've been voting for Democrats in Baltimore for 50 years. And East Baltimore and West Baltimore look like a damn bomb road. And then as soon as Hogan or Ehrlich invest some money in West North Avenue, oh, they're the devil. Well, damn it, this son of a gun who's been sticking it to us for the past 50 years, the past 30 elections, they seem just as diabolical and egregiously ugly to me.
Well, as I say, Donnie, I mean, I think white supremacy does not know political party. And so the same dynamics that occur amongst a lot of the progressive community, you know, what I look at is not people's political affiliation. I look at how they live. What do they do? How do they behave day to day in their interactions, you know, and how they live their lives. And I've seen for a lot of Democrats, progressive liberal Democrats in Baltimore City, again, I haven't seen a whole lot of difference between how they live and how their Republican counterparts live on a day-to-day basis in places like Texas or, you know, or Alabama. So it's really about what people really believe and what they're truly committed to.
Let me ask you this. You're a pretty smart guy. Where'd you go to school?
I went to undergrad at Princeton University and then law school at University of Virginia and in Charlottesville and Bucerius Law School in Hamburg, Germany.
Yeah, you went to law school. So you've been to school overseas. What's the school in Germany?
Bucerius Law School.
Okay, so Sie sprechen Sie Deutsch?
Ja, ich kann Deutsch.
Okay, so you know you're a black man with a couple of skills.
Mm-hmm.
How much do we lose being racist compared to other places in the world? How much does racism cost us?
Oh God, it's incalculable. I mean, I think one thing that I've always loved about my time in Europe is that even though it's very white, obviously in a place like Germany, also Poland.
My daddy said they love black men over there, though.
So I won't speak to that, but what I will say is, you know, what I love about going there is that when I'm there, it's one of the places in the world where, you know, you can finally like focus on yourself and what you're trying to do, as opposed to blackness and race constantly. You don't lose, you know, I'm not saying you lose your identity when you're there. Identity still matters and it's still there, but race and racism take up such a huge piece of the American psyche, of our psyche in Baltimore, of the amount of energy.
Well, see, that's what happens when you don't carry your own water. My ex-mother-in-law posted this thing on Facebook. I'll never forget it. She said, he who carries his own water learns to appreciate every drop. When you think about how this white privilege came about, it came about from people who benefited from slavery.
Yes.
So there's this innate sense from people who came to this country, often the descendants of killers, thieves, rapists, robbers, because they didn't send their best and brightest over here. They sent their, what do you call them? Expendables.
Yep.
And they came here and got free labor. So that's the part that gets me. You had a 400-year head start on my people. But now you standing on my corner asking me for some change. And it's just different than a squeezy kid.
Right.
It's
I mean, I think
diabolically disrespectful.
it is. I mean, and it's especially disrespectful at the, I would say, at the state level, because when you're looking at a lot of these white addicts who are coming into the city, and I just had a conversation with someone about this yesterday, because there's a building in our neighborhood that we're looking to reposition, bring in a cafe or some. It's been a vacant building on Maryland Avenue, and it was taken over by a number of addicts. Probably over 24 addicts were living in this building. And I was very surprised to go and see that they were overwhelmingly white addicts who had sort of taken over this building. And as they came out, I'm just listening. They're trying to figure out how to get back home. And they're describing their homes as being in Dundalk, in Essex. One was from Harford County. So these folks are all coming into the city. And these folks are coming into the city because the clinics that we have in Baltimore, a lot of these methadone clinics are unwilling to locate in the counties where these people live. They're unable to locate there. But again, we don't have a strong enough leadership in Baltimore to really push back and say, hey, we'll take care of the people who are here in Baltimore, but you, Harford County, Baltimore County, Montgomery County, Anne Arundel County, you need clinics in your own neighborhoods to support the addicts who live in your communities. It's unfair to Baltimore to bus all these people into the city for quote unquote treatment. Then when they're done, drop them off, let them off on the streets of Baltimore. Many of these people end up staying overnight or staying in the city because they have no way to get back home once they're bust in. Yeah,
I know. Kelly, how can people get in touch with you? How can people be a part of what you're doing? You do such wonderful things in the city. And I thank you for loving Baltimore, for investing here. You have the heart and courage to do things that a lot of people won't do. Last comment from Michael Haney. That's a novelty, a black elected official who believes and likes black people. Maybe we ought to get Michael Haney to run for office. I'm starting to wonder if the smartest black people don't run for office.
Well, look, I ran once and I decided it's not for me, at least not at the moment. And there's much more that can be done working behind the scenes and working on the economic development as opposed to the political development of the city. But yeah, you can reach out to us. Our Facebook page is Historic Old Goucher. And that's OLD, then GOUCHER. Historic Old Goucher is our Facebook page. So feel free to check it out. Send us a message on Facebook.
Good deal. Kelly Cross, thank you for joining us today. We will be in touch. Thank you for all you do. Thank you for what you've enlightened me to. And I love that beautiful grape garden that you have there. I did not believe that wine was made here in Baltimore. Who knew?
Thank you, Doni. Pleasure to be here.
Good morning, world.